Well, it seems everybody is going huswif mad. I I call it a hussif. I know other people call it a huswif, or it's commonly known as a housewife. But if you haven't seen, it's basically an antique sewing roll that will hold everything you need to do some sewing and stitching on the go. I think it was given to soldiers at war so that they could mend their uniforms whilst on the field. I am joining in the craze. I can't turn on YouTube at the moment without seeing somebody making, starting, planning, suggestions, people showing completed ones. I really love Chrissy Cross's. Hers is really sweet. So I want to have a go at making my own. I don't want to use anything that's too precious at the moment until I know what I'm doing. So I'm literally using this scrap of fabric, which is kind of an upholstery weight fabric that came in a bag for $1. And the colours are a little bit shabby chic for my taste, but this is just a practice one. And you watch, it's going to turn out nice and I'll love it, and I probably will keep it as is. So most of the ones I've seen have a pocket at the bottom, which I think I'll do as well. When I bought my sewing machine last, it came with this test swatch with the stitches. I like the idea of sticking that on there somewhere. What I'm really basing this around is this little sewing pouch, or little zippered pouch, which I got from the op shop, filled with someone's old sewing notions. I've taken most of it out. It had a whole bunch of tatting shuttles in there. There's a little bit of tatting in here, an old tape measure, and some newer things as well. It's lined with plastic though, and the plastic is starting to deteriorate, so I'm wondering if I can remove that plastic somehow and reline it, which I've never done before, and I've never made a zippered pouch before, so that will be an experiment in itself. But I like the idea of having that in there, and I don't know if I can make it detachable somehow. I'm thinking I could put some press studs in the bottom, and then, you know, when you open it, you can close it from the inside. I don't know if that's going to be too fiddly, but this is just, you know, we're just playing around at the moment. So I like that there. I like the idea of having some rolls of cotton, spools of cotton, and maybe a tape measure. I think this tape measure came in that pouch as well. Sorry, I've got you on a really weird angle to try and fit all of this in. I like the idea of some scissors, and you know, this came around a Merchant and Mills tape measure, and it's cardboard, and I know it's not going to work, but I like that sitting there for now. Anyway, we'll see. That I also have this piece of stitching. I don't know if that was, it's a house or it's a castle or something printed on there, and then someone has come along and done some really fine stitching. Shalgrave, circa 1889. I think when I bought it, it was stitched to a board, so it was obviously framed at one point. I think I might have even picked it up from reverse garbage in the bottom of a bin, but I think that works nicely with it, and I like the idea of that sitting up the top. So I'm wondering if maybe, ignore that, I'm going to cut that off probably, and that maybe that's the inside flap. Maybe that becomes another pocket, I don't know. I'd also like somewhere for needles, and I picked up this little stitched book, and I think it came from the markets, maybe Blackheath in the mountains, New South Wales. I can't remember, to be honest, but it's very cute, and I think this would make a very nice needle minder. Maybe I can put some safety pins and things, so maybe that can go there. And I also like the idea of this being detachable, so whether that's maybe some ribbon or something to tie it here, I don't know. So obviously there's a little bit of room for some things up here, and I think that's maybe enough. Maybe I could put some of those quilting clips here, but I suppose this is going to hold a lot of stuff, so I don't really need to lay more things out. So it might be that I just add some more embellishments, some doilies or some other embroideries. So the idea is that obviously I'm going to trim along the end here. It's all going to roll up very nicely, right? And that's going to maybe fold over like that. It's already very chunky, so I don't know if having that zippered pouch in there is a good idea or not, but I mean, it feels nice. All right, so after, what's the next step? Well, I have to decide on a lining fabric, I think. Most people I've seen have put some wadding in between the outer fabric and the lining fabric. Because this has got quite a weight to it, I don't know if I'll need the lining. Sorry, if I need the wadding. So I'll have to decide. So if, let's say we're going to keep this in here because I do really like it, we need to think of lining fabric. Now, I love this fabric, which I think was just a scrap from the sewing basket for a couple of dollars. So that's very nice. That could work well. Maybe I could use, these are little butterflies. Maybe that's too green. Again, this is really just like a practice one, so not really any pressure. Maybe this one. Maybe this is too much, probably too much, but I mean, if I add other things on top of it, it would tone down the pattern. But maybe that's a bit too much, I think. I could go with something like this, which is much more in the pastel range. Maybe that looks okay. Sorry, it's really overcast here today, so hopefully this is showing up well on screen. And I also have this, which I think is an old bed sheet. Now I could run it this way, which I think I actually quite like this one, or I could even like open it right up and have it running, well, you get the idea, have the stripes running the other way. So that will be my next problem to solve. Which fabric? What do you think? Did one of them look better than the others? I think I don't mind this one. I think this one is out. It's too much. This one is nice, but I think too green. So I think maybe a blue. I really like this one. Maybe it's too dark. I don't know. When I come back, I might have things cut out. Maybe I'll start pinning things in place. I might move bits and pieces around. And I might take some scissors to the lining of this pouch. So if you have any tips on how to line a pre-made pouch, it doesn't have to be anything fancy, please let me know. Or do you think I can just get away with removing the lining altogether and leaving just the fabric? Oh, actually, I think there's some deteriorating lining in there as well, so I've got to get all of that out. The fabric on the outside is quite thin, so I don't know. And that's where I'm up to. I'll see you in a bit. Okay, I've had a little play around, and did you decide that this was the best fabric? I know I didn't give you any chance to let me know, but I think this is the one I'm going with. There's a subtle pink running through the back, which ties in with, you know, some of the colours on here. And I think that's the one I'm going to stick with. So what I've done is just folded over the top of this fabric here to reinforce the top of the pocket. I've cut a little, well, I've cut a lining of some thin bamboo wadding, so that will fold over and be the bottom pocket. I'll actually cut the lining to size. It's just sitting there for demonstration at the moment. In terms of layout, I think I'm going to stitch this piece here, and it may or may not be a pocket. I've probably got too much in there already, so I don't know if it'll have room. This might go here. I might add some more embellishment on the pocket. My little zipper pouch is going to sit there. I don't know if I'm going to attach it. I might just sit it there so when it rolls up it just stays wrapped up inside. What else have we got? Cotton, yes. Measuring tape. I think I'm going to put the needle book here because I found this cute little fabric pouch, which may have come from the sewing box as well. Sorry, the sewing basket. And that might sit here and hold my scissors. So I might have to put something to reinforce the back of it so that the scissors don't poke through the fabric. But I think maybe that's how we're going to lay things out. And the idea is that when it's all stitched together, hopefully it's going to roll nicely. And this will go over the top. Now it's really chunky at the moment because the lining fabric is just folded in half. I might reduce the amount of wadding I've got lining the pocket. Maybe I can unfold this and just make that, turn that over slightly less so that it can give me a little bit more for the top flap. And that's where we're at. I think the next thing to do is start tacking things in place, and then I have to decide whether or not I will hand stitch the lining together. Maybe I will canter stitch the whole thing. I don't know. Maybe I'll machine stitch. I haven't actually decided. And of course I have to think about what I will use for the binding, which I've never actually done before, so that will also be a first. Okay, so next time I see you, I'll have a little more progress to show. Here's a little progress update on my hussif. I found this little piece that's been floating around in my stash forever, which is just some ribbon embroidery. I think I'm going to put that on this pocket and turn it into a pocket for something else, maybe a pen. This little piece of something might go there. Okay, so I showed you that's going to stay here with the embroidery underneath. I've sewn on a piece of ribbon to hold the 2 cotton reels, and it's just held on with a little snap fastener, which thankfully is small enough to fit through the hole in the cotton reel, which I actually didn't think about before I sewed it on, so it was just lucky that that worked out well. And I've got a little button at the top to hold the ribbon down. For the little needle keep, I think I'm going to take this ribbon and stitch it down here, sew the ends, and add another snap fastener to close, maybe with a button, I don't know. For the tape measure, I did find some very small doilies, which maybe that would be cute if I stitched it there to make a tiny little pocket for the tape measure. To be honest, it really doesn't need to sit out. It could go in the little pouch, but you know, I think it looks cute if we've got something else sitting there. For the scissors, underneath I've just taken a scrap piece of this fabric and stitched together a little section here, which is just a little pouch to protect the fabric from the back so that it doesn't get damaged when I'm putting the scissors in and out. It's a bit fiddly. Hopefully it will work when I actually stitch this little pouch over the top of it, because I won't be able to, oh no, I might be able to put my finger in there to guide the scissors in. And I think I'm going to stitch this up the top here, maybe along 3 sides, and I think I might use that to hold some quilt clips just on there, because that's a turned over edge. The other thing I think I'm going to do, I know I've just wrapped the fabric around here at the moment, but I don't think it's going to stay like that. I think I might actually want to round the corners, if not the whole end of that, so that when it wraps over it's rounded as opposed to straight. So I think that's maybe what's going to happen. So a little bit more stitching and hopefully we'll have some progress on the inside. Okay, I've made a little more progress on my sewing roll. I've added this small piece here with some French knots in the center. I've stitched down this piece of ribbon embroidery and added some running stitch to the edge of this here. And when that's folded over, that's going to be the large pocket. I've sewn down this piece of embroidery and added some running stitch so that it's consistent with the other pockets. Down this piece of ribbon to hold the fabric book, and that's just with a snap fastener. I've sewn down a small crochet doily, which I tea-dyed first because it was just too white and looked a bit strange with all the other pieces. I've added some running stitch to this little pocket here and sewn that down. And I've sewn down this little test piece of stitching, which is going to be a pocket as well. So I think the next step is to tack down the lining to the outside fabric. I don't know if everybody is doing this or if they're just binding it and letting that attach the two fabrics, but it might feel a bit too floppy. So I'm thinking that I'm just going to do some invisible stitches into the wadding only so that it doesn't go through. And once that's done, I think I'm going to round the corners and think about the binding. And I also need to think about how I'm going to keep it closed, whether I add a button or a tie of some sort. So next time you see this, hopefully there'll be a little bit more progress again. I am back to show you my finished hussif. I've decided to go with a buckle closure, and this is some grosgrain ribbon which I think came from some bonbons. I can't remember. It needs ironing. I had to join two pieces together so it gets a bit stuck when I take it in and out of the buckle. I think it's a nice size. It's about 20 centimeters wide and just under 70 centimeters long, I think. So let me show you inside. I've rounded the corners, sewn in my little scrap here, added some quilt clips. I've got my scissors behind the pocket, and in here I'm just holding my needle threader. I don't know if I'm going to need some ribbon to hold these scissors in. Seems like that's a popular thing to do, so we'll see how it goes. I've got my tape measure underneath the little doily, tiny little needle keep with just a few needles and pins at the moment, and I might, well, you probably can't see that actually, I might fill that up with some more things as I go. Got 2 spools of cotton, and in hindsight I would have attached this a little differently. It's I need to use an awl to actually feed the press stud through the middle of the spools. I mean, it works, but I probably would have done it in a better way next time. Sewn on my pocket. I sewed this on so crookedly the first time I had to re-stitch it, and right now I've just got some snaps in there, mainly because the colours match. Over here in my big pocket, I've actually realised that this little pouch fits in there nicely when it doesn't have too much in it, so that's probably going to tuck in there. And I've got a little finger puppet in my pocket which has nothing to do with sewing at all, but I like to have him in my sewing kit whenever I'm working on something, and he fits really nicely in there. And to be honest, this pocket really isn't practical for much else because things just fall straight out of it, so he may stay there. I mentioned before that I used some twill tape that was actually handles from a shopping bag, which I've just stitched along the edge, and I did 2 rows of machine stitching along the edge before I added the tape, just to make it a bit easier on myself. So I think that's turned out very nicely. It's very nice to have a completed project, which is a very rare thing for me these days. And there we go. This just folds up very nicely. It's got a little bit of room to grow once this sits flat. This ribbon can do with some ironing at some point, but I think it works well with the inside stitching. So I'm really pleased with the way that this has turned out. I did say that this was just going to be like a test run. I've learnt some things that I might do differently next time, but all in all, I think this has been a very fun project. So I hope you've enjoyed watching. Hopefully you've gotten some ideas for your own, and happy stitching.